Hey, good morning, everyone. Good evening. And actually, it's in local time, it's 9:30, so we probably end with a good night as well. This is November, and I've been working with Walmart for the past almost 3 years. And since joining, mostly I've worked with high-scale real-time streams, processing, serving, and storing billions of events a day. So basically, we work with customer data. So all the customer related data in Walmart for retargeting or advertisement and various other use cases. We are actually a data platform who ingests the data and then we serve the data to different models available. So as Mary Lee said, like in past 2 years, I have hold like 3 patents and I'm an active contributor back to Kafka as well. So let's start. Imagine that you want to purchase an iPhone and you log into walmart.com. And while you're about to make that purchase, we suggest that we have really good quality red onions available at Walmart. Why don't you buy a kg of these as well? Or imagine that we are mailing you every day that there is an Xbox in your cart. Why don't you log in back and buy it when you might have already bought it from a Walmart store? Or let us consider a scenario that you really wanted to gift an instant pot to your grandmother on Thanksgiving. And you waited for weeks and weeks for the special offer. And finally, on the big day on Thanksgiving, you saw a great sale going on. You log into walmart.com and alas, it's sold out. Would you, any of you like such kind of experiences? Of course, no, right? So what do you think is common among all these scenarios we talked about? Lack of use of customer data. So what all we discussed are typical use cases for any e-commerce company to use data science efficiently. In today's age, it's so important to personalize the experience of each customer and predict consumer behavior that without it, even the biggest of the companies may fall. But what is even more important than using customer data for all the above scenarios? Doing it all in real time. So time is of great essence in generating predictions, and any actionable intelligence has a very limited time window attached to it, after which it becomes obsolete. So if you left that Xbox in your cart, we would like to send an email or a notification immediately with some incentives to complete that purchase before you go and buy it from somewhere else, right? So machine learning is enabling a data scientist to make that impact every day. And e-commerce is a domain where challenges are vast. A few years ago, a company rolled out an offer that whoever spends most on the website in a particular month will get free air tickets between any two international cities. You know, great offer. Interestingly, the person who won the air tickets fooled the system. He bought a $25 worth of gift card. And with that gift card, he bought another gift card. And with the same gift card, he bought another gift card and he went on doing that till actually he had, the company's database showed that he had spent thousands of dollars in that particular month. And in fact, he had just spent $25. So how crazy is that? Do you think that helped actually? Help the company? Not really, right? So fraud detection is one of the domains where ML is being used widely, and be it delivery optimization or predicting that we expect so many customers to buy that instant pot on Thanksgiving, and even suggesting smart pricing to maximize the profits. So just a fun fact, on last Thanksgiving, Walmart stores sold so many instant pots that if you lined up them one by one, it would occupy 90 miles of area. Crazy, right? So on the screen, you'll see a few of the domains where ML is being used in Walmart. And all ML pipelines are basically built around data. And someone who has worked on these will tell you that getting the data right is one of the hardest challenging part. And data scientists spend a lot of time in cleaning and preparing the data that they are always playing catch to release new models. Now let's see a typical life cycle of a data science model. At least 50% of this time is being spent in recognizing the source of data and transforming it for your use case. We observed this behavior and we saw that every team in a company is building their own data pipeline, even though most of them is using the same customer data. So we are spending money, time, and manpower in creating these duplicate pipelines for which 50% of the work is almost same. This made us think the only way we can scale and be efficient is by building a customer data platform, which you can leverage as platform as a service as well as knowledge as a service. So with this thought process in mind, we identified few of the features that the platform should possess. The platform should be capable of processing various customer events, deriving, inferencing, and serving knowledge in the real time with the help of APIs. Not just the raw data, but knowledge as a whole. It should be reliable and scalable enough to handle the Walmart scale. And it should be capable of working at high throughput and low latency to serve those real-time use cases we talked about earlier. And universal feature store is one of the requirements which significantly helps in reducing that life cycle we have gone through in the earlier slide. And the platform should have a pluggable design to onboard new models very easily. And the deployment processes should be simple enough to reduce dev to prod time, which is one of the challenges with data science models nowadays. So with all these thoughts in mind, we started working on a customer data platform a few years ago. And let me present to you a customer backbone. So it is our customer data platform, which is built on top of Kafka Streams, where processing and data storage takes place on the same node for the customer. So there is no inter-process communication. There is no network call to fetch the data whenever the processing is happening. So the data and processing takes place on the same node in the same process. So it is internally using embedded store, which is RocksDB, and minimizes those network calls required to fetch and put the data. Now, data scientists can plug their models to this platform, and we can take care of hosting the model and providing them all the data it requires. So basically what we have done is created a marketplace of models inside Walmart. And the platform is capable of data ingestion, transformation, feature extraction, model inferencing, and publishing the outputs as well as storing them on the platform itself to use them as a feature for another model, so that they don't have to be, that the features those are already inferenced don't have to be calculated by a different model. So our aim to build this platform our aim is to build this platform as a source of truth of customer data across Walmart. We basically operate on three principles: reach, freshness, and depth. By reach, I mean we want to know more information about each customer. By freshness, we want to know about each customer as early as possible. And by depth, we want to know about more information about each customer. So let me take you through the platform with the help of an example. Let's talk about that buying that iPhone again. So you log into walmart.com, you added the iPhone into your cart. So there is an event which is generated on the website, which lands onto a CBB Kafka. So CBB stands for Customer Backbone. Now we know that there is some user who would like to buy an iPhone. CBB platform ingests that event and stores internally. But what it also does is send that same event to further downstream models who are dependent upon that particular event. Like there could be a recommendation model who is interested in add to cart events. So this model takes into account a bunch of features and generates a bunch of items which are personalized to you. Now, all this work needs to be done in almost milliseconds before you actually land on the cart page, so that all the recommendations which are generated can be shown on the same page itself, right? To dissect it even further, there would be multiple partitions at each level, and each of the event would land into its specific partition, right? Because all these events are actually partitioned by customer ID. So for a single customer, all his events will always land into a single partition. And from there, it is ingested by specific Kafka Streams partition and hosted by a machine. where all the processing takes place. But one important point to note here is that each partition of Kafka streams is single threaded. So if there are a bunch of models interested in the same event, like recommendation, personalization, and other, there are different models. So they will be executed by the same thread, but sequentially. So from a specific use case, it hinders us to scale because we can't onboard too many models then, because each model takes its own execution time, and what we claim to be real time is not so much real time now. So why did we choose Kafka Streams then? Before going into Kafka Streams, I would just wanted to point out a little thing that Kafka and Kafka Streams are not exactly same. So Kafka Streams is a wrapper around Kafka. It uses it internally, but like just a recap of Kafka. Kafka is a producer-consumer system where you have different producers. They produce all the data into different partitions on brokers, and you can actually scale this particular Kafka by increasing the number of brokers, and there could be different consumers downstream who are, reading from those the topics which were produced by different producers. So it's highly scalable. But what is Kafka Streams is a different library on top of Kafka, and it provides a lot of added benefits to process actually. So first of all, Kafka Streams is very simple to use. You can just add Kafka jar as a dependency in your project and you're good to go. It is library and not a framework. So the deployments are pretty easy and cluster management is simple and taken care by Kafka Streams itself. Then it has embedded DB, which is RocksDB, which is pluggable. And you can in fact replace it with any other DB which is embedded. We even tried using LMDB and Berkeley DB at one point of time and it just worked fine. So this reduces some critical milliseconds from our processing flow, since the processing and storage works in the same process itself. So the interactive queries is one of the very important feature which wasn't available in the other alternatives we were exploring at that point of time. And since we wanted to serve this process data, we wanted to have interactive queries that whenever like we are querying a single machine to ask for a customer data and that particular machine doesn't hold the data, it can actually read out the request to the actual machine which is holding the data. So it means that when you, so every machine holds this assignment metadata of which partition is being held by which particular VM. So if you have a very big cluster, like in our case, it's a 1600 VMs big cluster. So that a lot of data is distributed among all these machines. So all these assignments of which partition is being held by which VM is in this particular assignment metadata.
Devinder, yeah. Your slides are going off the screen, so we're not seeing the whole slide. Oh, that's fine. The one before was not. So can you make sure that they're centered on your screen so that we can see them?
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So it provides a DSL library.
It's slightly off now. There, it's fine. I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay. Let me. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. So Kafka Streams is highly scalable in the sense that it's highly scalable, that it's very simple to use and it's very highly scalable. It provides a DSL library, which is again very simple to use. And you can write your own processors and you can leave some complex magic if you want to do, but the DSL libraries provides these simple operations which can be done with the help of DSL library as well. So suppose also like it provides various processing guarantees which are very crucial for some systems, like exactly one semantics. So suppose financial systems, they have to work on exactly one semantics, because you wouldn't want your customers to be deducted twice for a single transaction, or even add money twice into the account for the same credit. So even though like we had to write some part of the code for our use case, we leveraged most of the out-of-box features of Kafka Streams, which work pretty well. So these were some of the alternatives on the side which you see, which we considered at that point of time, like Apache Samza, Apache Spark, Apache Flink, and even Dynamite from Netflix. And like they had few of the shortcomings which you wanted at that point of time. Like interactive queries was one which was not available in others. And for some of them, like deployment was pretty complex. So there were few of the challenges which we thought, and we went ahead with Kafka Streams at that point of time. So that's why we used like various features which were inherently present in Kafka Streams. We still had to change some of the things which we'll talk about, and the challenges which we faced later in the slides. But it was a pretty big and good system to work iteratively on. Yeah. So let's talk about a few of the additions we did on top of Kafka Streams to build this platform. Multi-tenancy term in general is being used in the industry as a complete isolation of resources between clients, be it CPU, memory, data, or other resources. But for our use case, we are talking about multi-tenancy here in a very specific way. We have multiple tenants onboarded on a platform, but since the isolation, between them is not as concrete. Like consider one of the model outputs, how likely is the customer to buy a particular item? Like this is one of the inference from a model. So then there could be another model which actually requires this particular inference as a feature itself. So rather than recalculating it again, we are storing it so that it can be provided into different models as well. So that's why I said that this demarcation isolation is not complete among all these different models. So we still sanitize each model, but they still share the same CPU. We just talked about how single Kafka stream thread caters to a single partition. This restricts as to onboard multiple models. Like if we have multiple models to trigger in a single event, because of the single thread restriction, all the models dependent have to be triggered in sequence, right? And the total event processing time of that system comes out to be the sum of processing time of our system as well as the execution time of the downstream models. So the any model which is actually getting the event at the end loses out a little on the freshness aspect. Also, since we are hosting external models on a system, any of those models could handle the bugs differently. So with using Kafka, vanilla Kafka stream, this was one of the challenges which we faced, that if a client doesn't handle a bug properly, it could be catastrophic to the whole platform and might bring down the whole process. Another challenge which came was whenever we had to ship a newer version of the model, if there's no code change, then only the serialized model is changed. Even then we had to restart the whole platform. And this led to some downtime and the models were getting affected.
Devinder, I don't think you're advancing your slides. Keep going. There you go. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So like any of those models were not in complete isolation. So like whenever there's a bug, it actually brought down the whole platform as a whole. So these were one of a few of the challenges which when we are building a marketplace for models which we faced. So as we took that iPhone example, and let's see that how multi-tenancy works in our case, and we haven't seen much about the system yet. So let's drill down a little bit into the system and let's see what are the internal the system holds. So we have a CBB processor, which is a critical platform piece. And then we have a CBB store. So we'll actually distribute these stores also further. In further slides, we'll talk about the data model, but on a higher level, this is the CBB processor, takes care of processing the events and ingesting them, distributing them, and then storing into a CBB store. And then after processing, it sends those events to different downstream models which are dependent upon that particular event. Like an add to cart event would be subscribed by a recommendation model, or a transaction event could be subscribed by a fraud detection model, So it actually decides that which model requires what kind of event, which whenever we onboard a particular model, they actually tell us that what subscription they would want to. So then the CBV processor sends those events downstreams to each of those models, and each of those models can actually have their own store as well. So as we talked about that, like processing is challenging in a single threaded system when each of those models are running sequentially. To solve this problem, what we did was very obvious. Like instead of making them run in sequence, we decided to run them in parallel. So there were few changes which we had to do in the Kafka Stream side to do this. But like as you see, there's a crypt downstream which is add asynchronous processing to Kafka Stream. So it's not just us who are dependent upon such a use case that we want to have them running in parallel. So even industry-wide, there are a few other use cases also which wanted this particular kind of support. So this particular thing solved a variety of challenges for us, like all the challenges on the multi-tenancy front, which we talked about earlier. Now models, each of those models can run them at their own pace rather than affecting any other model. And all of those models can actually as much less time they take to execute. So if a particular model is slow, it doesn't affect any of the other models downstream, right? So in summary, like what we do is like, as I explained, doing it all in parallel solve most of the challenges we face. Platform still takes care of platform level responsibilities of processing and storing the events, but still models subscribe to these events they are interested in and fetch those events themselves. So in a way, we shifted from a push-based architecture to a pull-based architecture. This enabled us to have a proper balance of sharing and isolation among the models, so that any of those models doesn't affect any other ongoing model, but will still able to use the required data from another model. So data model is one of the critical piece of any model inferencing platform. And as we talked about CBV stores earlier, so actually CBV stores are divided into three kind of stores actually. So one are tenant stores, which are hop-on stores, which are in the domain of each of the models. Each model can actually store their inferences in the hop-on store. And then there are platform stores. One is a leaf store and one is the sequence store. Like the sequence store is a store which actually was required because we decided to run everything in parallel, and leaf store is actually the whole knowledge store which we are serving. So the leaf store contains all the customer related data of Walmart, and the data is divided into different parts. Like there are linkages. Like linkages you can think of if a particular person transacts with different IDs, like if a particular person has different IDs and he uses those IDs to do different transactions. So as models, each of those models would want the whole information about a customer and not those different silos, different like data related to a different ID. So we want to know about the whole customer information. So that's why we're storing linkages, so that we know that this is the same customer who is using different particular IDs. And we can actually create those linkages. Like think of it as a customer graph where all of those IDs are a node in a graph, and then they are connected to each other whenever it's an ID for a single customer. Events is like customer related interactions or transactions. So all the events for a particular customer are stored in the events part of the model. And then there are addresses, which are any of the addressable entities for a particular customer. Like it could be an email, or it could be a phone number, or any of the addressable entities with which you can address a customer. So those are stored in the address part of the store. And then there are facets. So facets is any of the customer profile, like any of the declared attributes by a particular customer, like age or name or something like that. So those are the facets. So this all four combined actually tells you the whole information about each customer, and these all information can be used in variety of ways by different models. Like a recommendation model would want that what is something which a particular customer usually buys. so that, they can actually target that particular person. So yeah, and the sequence store is something which helped us in making them run in all in parallel. So since we are losing out of time, so I'll push to the end. And these are some of the benchmarks which we did at the end. And if you see, like our Kafka cluster is 400 cores big, and our Kafka Streams cluster is 800 core. It has 800 core VMs. So basically, we are able to ingest at more than 1 million per minute, and we are serving this particular knowledge which we talked about at less than 10 milliseconds at 95th percentile. So a really great number on the client side. So we started this particular platform with this particular thought process in mind, that we want to reduce the minimal duplication among all those teams and have a low latency system and reduce maintenance overhead for different models so that they can onboard themselves, which in a way we have achieved. But like as we bring on more and more models, like there are various particular challenges which we face. Yeah, so passing it on to Vikas. Thank you guys.